What's going on, everyone? I'm going to do a voiceover just because I had so many different videos that I had to take for this between building it and going out in the woods. So what you are looking at is the Bear Creek Arsenal bufferless upper. Now, technically it does have a buffer tube extension, but they don't use it for a buffer system or recoil spring. They use that proprietary tiny rinky-dink skinny AK style rod and spring that you saw above. What I'm doing is redesigning it to not only add a little bit of bolt mass, but change the recoil orientation. And on top of that, they have a very small buffer extension and then a really large chunk of aluminum, as you can see there. And it still adds a lot to that rear buffer section. So in my opinion, because it's not more flush, it's not essentially a bufferless, it's just a very shortened version. And I have other very short buffer tubes that you don't have to buy a proprietary upper receiver or recoil setup that are almost as short. So I wanted to kind of redesign it as my own thing. So for anyone asking, why would I do this to a system that was already working? Well, that's the problem. It worked most of the time, but I did have a lot of hiccups with it, and that bolt mass was very lean at only 13 ounces. I wanted to try to add at least 2 or 3 ounces of weight and make it to where I could fix it on the fly if I had any issues with the recoil system. So I chopped down a 5-ounce bolt to about 1.25 inches long, something like that, and I chopped down a factory carbine spring to about 3.5 inches.
I've got my BCA that I've got my own little proprietary buffer system in there. I honestly don't know how this thing's gonna run. It feels like it's got good spring tension, not having any issues there. I've got some different ideas. The only thing I will say is from where it picks up the round, if you look in there with this bolt all the way back, that might create an issue. I might have to shorten this buffer just a hair more so this can slide back just a little bit more. Let's see how this thing loads. There you go. That's how that's gonna do. Also, it might be an issue with this ammo. The Remington 147 is a flat nose, so I'm gonna go ahead and manually load this one in. All right. I've got one in the chamber. And just threw the mag in there. I'm not necessarily as worried if this mag cycles. This is more of a proof of will the bolt cycle. So let's find out. You can see I don't have the recoil guide rod or any of that on the back. It's my own proprietary system, just with a shortened carbine buffer and a shortened carbine buffer spring. And this bolt mass is now 16.25 ounces roughly. So, without further ado, it shot. It was crazy quiet, and it cycled that round out. But I am gonna have to modify my buffer just a hair so it can come back enough to really clear that mag. I don't think we're gonna get reliable feeding out of that. So, just to make sure it's not the mag or the cartridge, let's swap over to something else. I'm gonna use my 40 round here, 115 grain FMJ. And the 115's just loaded. So let's see how that does. This is gonna be a little bit louder, no more subsonic. So you're gonna hear a little bit of that supersonic crack. It's still quiet to the ear though. But I have the same issue. It's not loading the rounds as well as I want them to. Mainly because that bolt's not coming back far enough to cycle it efficiently. So let's try it again. Almost, but not quite. And there still could be a situation of there's so much bolt, like the bolt's moving a lot more rapid. The recoil feels slightly better than before with the proprietary system. I'm actually going to do a slow-mo real quick because I really want to see what's happening in that action And I don't know if the bolt is just hitting the back stupid hard and then shooting forward with insane velocity, because this setup does feel like a slightly stiffer spring than factory. So I might have to shorten that recoil spring up a link or two. But maybe it's just slamming so far forward that it's just slamming the round up, and that's what's happening. So let me do a slow-mo and see.
All right, so after reviewing the footage, what I determined is that that bolt had a crazy amount of velocity, and I think it didn't have enough dwell time after the bolt started to cycle. So this is after I fixed the problem. You see how much further it goes past the ejector. Originally, that's about as far as it went right there, and that was the issue I was having, is the next round in the magazine wasn't even really coming up fast enough for the bolt to properly grab it, and it was twisting that round, or it wasn't catching the round at all. Now, with this new fix, it seems to cycle okay, and what the fix was is I chopped about 2 or 3 links off that coil spring, and I shortened the buffer down to exactly 1 inch long. That coil spring is about 3 1/4 inches, and it still adds 2.65 ounces of weight, and it still cycles just fine by hand. Also, for safety reasons, if you don't understand firearms and the mechanics of it, please don't try this at home. I am not responsible for any injuries. In the future, as finances allow, I will make my own buffer tube extension. It'll probably be a little bit longer than this current setup, and I will like to run a few cases of ammo through that setup in my own design just to see how well it holds up. So again, this is just a proof of concept, and in the future I'd like to design a buffer system that's really short, based around a standard bolt carrier. That way people can still keep their binary triggers and everything functioning, because with this bolt carrier, it's just not going to happen. Just a proof of concept here with my new buffer system.
Buffer system with the 1 inch buffer and the 3 1/4 inch spring. You can see how short that is. This buffer tube actually stops about right there, so it's even shorter, but that's the design. Shooting 147 grain subsonic flat nose Remington Omega 36. Check it out. Oh, that one failed to reset the trigger. Got a few failures here. That was the last round. It didn't eject all the way. Let's try. Supersonic 115 grain and see how they cycle. Alright, so it cycles, but you can still outrun that trigger, and I think that's exactly what's happening. It's a mixture of outrunning the trigger and some crazy volt velocities. So we're gonna go back to the drawing board, but we're getting a more functional system, so something is happening. But you get a hiccup every now and again.
All right, guys, I gotta keep it down a little bit. Everybody's sleeping. It's a little late, so I've got the gun apart. We've got no live ammo. We are safe, good to go. And here you go. You can see how the system is. The bolt carrier is actually chopped. There's no ledge there, so for the 87th time, for anyone wondering, the BCA will not work with a binary FRT or if you got the 3-position switch. Anywho, this is the buffer tube extension. You can see right there, it's only about an inch deep, roughly. This was the modified carbine spring and the 5-ounce buffer cut down to 1 inch, which perfectly fit inside the upper. But as you could see, every once in a blue moon, about every 5th or 6th shot, I had a hiccup. Now, I'm thinking, and this is me speculating, I'm thinking the recoil system that BCA had in place, which was the proprietary recoil system, proprietary rod and recoil spring that went in there. I'm wondering if, because the recoil impulse is coming straight through here and the recoil system's up here, it canted that bolt a little bit, allowing more drag and therefore slowing down the bolt velocity, and also allowing the bolt to catch the next round differently. I don't know. As far as the face of the bolt goes, it doesn't look any different than any other AR-9 bolt I have. It looks like a standard AR-9 bolt, just cut down. So what I was running into was the bolt was going forward so fast. Every 5th or 6th round was coming up like this and catching in the chamber like that. As you could see in one of the last shooting videos, about every 5th or 6th, just way too fast is what I'm guessing. I haven't actually had that particular type of jam with the factory recoil system and all that. So there's that. By the time I'm actually done with this system, because of just the way these receivers are designed, and the way they're designed with the buffer system, this will inevitably be about 2.5 to 3 inches long. So there's that. In order to run a true bufferless system, like what PSA has done and what some others have done, like SIG, MCX, and stuff like that, you would have to redesign the upper, which I'm not against. I just don't have enough room in this. Now this is a proprietary upper, hence the proprietary block that's bolted up where the gas key would go, and the system did work. I'm just trying to tinker with and design something of my own, as I've said before, and add mass. But through trial, I'm learning it's a little bit harder than I realized, but I will get there. And I just don't want to do any heavy modifications to the bolt like they had to do to make this work. And it might take me a long time, but you know what? I'm not disappointed, because you don't know till you try. And it did run. It just didn't run without jamming. So give myself one pat on the back for that. Anyways, that's what I did. It did work. It just isn't 100% reliable. So I'm gonna continue to tinker and see what I can do. Maybe modify another buffer that has a hammer weight internal and see if I could mess with that. Maybe that slide weight will let it dwell in the back just for a split second longer, and also eliminate bolt bounce. I'm also thinking that that proprietary recoil system eliminated bolt bounce because of the way it slams the bolt forward, because you're, again, recoil impulse is straight through here, but the recoil spring there, and that's going to cause the bolt to cant. Even if you can't see it, that's typically what's going to happen. I know that from AR experience going to piston conversion kits. Recoil spring back here, but the piston's hitting up there, you actually start getting wear marks on your bolt you don't typically get, because it creates a canting sensation because you're pushing up here, but recoil springs here. And anyways, without further ado, thank you for watching. If you want to see more stuff like this, let me know. And I've got a lot more in store for you guys. So thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.